ProListings.com. Today we're going to talk about putting your opponent on a range. A lot of pros make it look like they can read souls, but it's not really that. Basically what putting your opponent on a range means is you're making an educated guess as to what his likely holdings are. So you have the incomplete information of what he's shown you throughout the hand. Maybe he called the flop, he check raised the turn or whatever. You can infer as to what types of hands that he would make those particular plays with. As the hand progresses, you have more information and you can put him on more of an accurate range. When it starts out, it's like hazy. The range is very wide, and as you move on, you can slowly narrow it down until you probably have, hey, he has one of these 4 or 5 hands. Rarely are you going to be, oh, he has pocket threes, bam, red as soul. That doesn't work like that. May on TV, but that's not real poker. So we're going to take look at a couple examples of hands. Here we go. First one, we get pocket kings. C3 limps. We raise with our pocket kings, and he makes the call. At this point, he didn't raise pre-flop. It's a 6-handed table, so he's probably a weaker player. For the sake of the example, he's not a terrible player. We'll just say he's an average player. So his limp call pre-flop, what does that tell you? It tells us that he has probably a weak drawing hand, like a pocket pair, 2s through 9s, maybe 10s and up probably are raised. So go 2 through 9, suited connectors, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 jack, jack 9 suited, etc. Hands like that. Those are basically what most of his range are right now. Still a number of hands because we only have one information. He checked and then he limped and then he called pre-flop. So his range is very wide at this point. You can do that with tons and tons of hands. On the flop he checks to us, we bet 6 and he calls. Now we can narrow his range down a little bit more. There's not very many draws on the flop. He might have 4 or 5 for the gut shot. But there's not too many draws. He could have 7s, 8s, 9s, a 6, like something like ace-6, a jack, queen jack, king jack, 10 jack, jack 9, maybe even jack 8. The most of his hands right now are pair hands. Straight draw is unlikely that he's going to call 4 or 5 and then call a bet on the flop. It might happen, but we'll see as the hand plays out if that's a likely option. He checks to us again on the turn and we bet 14. He calls again. So maybe he's trapping 4 or 5, one more street. That's unlikely. His most likely hands are jacks now. 7s, 8s, 9s. Those hands likely, they give up on the turn. They gave it their shot on the flop. They checked. You bet. They called. They said, well, maybe we'll call one bet. Usually those hands will fold to extended turn play. We bet on the turn and he calls again. So he probably has a jack. Probably has queen jack, king jack, jack, whatever. We're still ahead. River comes ace. Bit of a scare card. I mean, it looks scary, right? It's an ace. We have pocket kings. They're ace magnets. But in reality, there's not too many aces he can have. What aces can we put in his range? Ace jack likely raised pre-flop, right? I mean, it could have check called, but you think you probably would have heard from top pair, top kicker before now. And that ace jack is a small part of his range. Ace 6, again, unlikely. That falls into the 7s, 8s, 9s category. It's like we call a flop bet, we give up on the turn. It's not, they're not going to call down 3 streets with that hand. So he has jack 10, jack queen, jack king. Those are the types of hands that mostly are the bulk of his range. None of those have an ace in them, so the ace isn't that much of a scare card. He checks once again, and we elect to make a value bet about a little less than half pot, just because his range is mostly jacks. Those jacks are going to want to see a showdown. We bet 18. He calls. Kings are good versus his jack. Picked up a flush draw on the turn, which accounts for him peeling with the worst jack. He might fold jack 9 offsuit on the turn, but since he has a club draw, he calls another street, and then he calls on the river because he feels his pot committed. You can see as the hand went on, we were more able to break down his range till when there's probably only 4 or 5 hands he could have, when at the start he could have 30, 40 hands. We don't know. It was too early to tell. Next hand we have pocket tens. In this hand, seat 3, he's a tag, he's tight aggressive, but he's one of those tight aggressive guys, like maybe poker tracker stats, voluntary put in pot 12%, maybe raise 10%. Early position, he raises the $4. There might be merits for 3-betting here, but we call. Everyone else folds, leaves us to fight it out. The flop comes 8 deuce 5. Okay, so before the flop, since he's a tight player, early position, we can put him on ace king, ace queen, maybe ace jack suited, and probably 10s through aces as the pocket pairs, maybe some 7s through 9s, smaller part of his range, and the small pocket pairs probably aren't in there. He probably folds those up front. And he continuation bets, which again doesn't really narrow his range down too much. A lot of players will continuation bet with any 2 cards that they raise pre-flop with, so we can't yet further define his range. He bets out and we decide to raise. This may not be the best play to raise, but for the sake of the example, we raise and he calls. Now we can narrow his range down. Now he doesn't have ace king, he doesn't have ace queen, he doesn't have ace jack, there are no draws he can have, so he has a made hand. He has pocket 8s, maybe, he has pocket 9s, maybe, and he has pockets 10s, jacks, queens, kings, aces. I say aces, kings, queens make up the bulk of his range. So far from the information we have, he bet out on the flop and then he called the raise. On an 8 high flop, there's not too many hands that he can have. He's got a strong hand. Our 10s are probably not very good, so when the 6 of diamonds comes on the turn, he checks and we decide to check through. We're not going to get any action from any worse hands, so we check through. River card comes 2 of hearts and all of a sudden he bets full pot. Now we can accurately put his range at aces, kings, queens. He had a strong hand, he told us, by bet calling the flop. When the turn goes check check, now he's trying to make up for that missed street by betting full pot to get value. He's not bluffing here ever. He's doing this strictly for value, and though our hand looks good, hey, we have an overpair, it's effectively ace 5. Like, our hand doesn't beat anything. So we fold. He shows us kings. Hey, that was nice of him to show. Our read was right. He had a strong hand. He check called the flop. Turn went check check. He tried to make up for that turn check by betting full pot on the river. Almost always a big hand from a tag like that. Next hand we have pocket 10s under the gun. We make it 4, and C6 is a regular tag lag, like 2019. He raises in a lot pre-flop, but he's positionally aware. He's probably a winner. He's at least a marginal winner, and he understands the game fairly well. He makes it 12. Everyone else folds around to us, who we make the call, and we flop a set. His range pre-flop is wide, but it's not so wide. Like, players 3-bet light, but a player like this isn't going to 3-bet light an under the gun raise. Simple put, if he's 3-betting an under the gun raise, they know if you're under the gun that you have to have a better hand than normal to open the pot, so they have to have a better than normal hand to 3-bet the pot. And he's still 3-bet knowing that we were under the gun. So we can go, he's got ace king, he's got ace queen, he's got aces through, probably 9 still might find a 3-bet, but that's the bottom of his range is 9s. So he 3-bets, we flop a set, we decide to check. I don't know, maybe we were trying to trap him. We check, and he checks through. This kind of defines his range a little bit more, but not too much. He probably doesn't have ace jack, because he probably doesn't 3-bet that to an under the gun raise. He might have queens or kings or aces and he's playing them deceptively. He may have jacks, he's playing deceptively. But he may actually not like that flop. He might have ace king, he might have ace queen, only with the gut shot. He doesn't want to bet it and risk getting check raised, so he'll take a free card. We don't know yet. We don't have enough information. Turn comes ace of diamonds. We elect to bet 15 into 25, and he just flat calls. Now we can more accurately determine his range. If he's calling a bet here, he has some sort of hand. He doesn't have king queen, because we said he's not going to raise that he's not going to 3-bet that to an under the gun raise. He probably doesn't have ace jack, so he could have ace king. Now he likes his hand. He hit his ace. He checked. That would explain the flop check. He had a gut shot. Ace king and ace queen are both in his range here after he checks through on the flop, hoping to get his gut shot, and he hits his top pair. So now he's happy. He calls a bet. So now the river comes 8 of diamonds, and we decide to bet 30 into 55. This is a good value, but we have a set. Obviously, we want to get paid for it. The backdoor flush game. Is the backdoor flush worrisome? Not really. There's no diamonds he can really have. The ace of diamonds on the board, he doesn't have an ace king of diamonds. King queen we were already losing to, but as we said, is not really part of his range. You can't eliminate it completely because players will do some strange things at times, but king queen is a very, very small part of his range. What we think he has is kings, queens, hands like that, ace king, ace queen. So now he shoves all in. We just decided that he probably doesn't have the diamonds, but he also probably doesn't have the kings or queens, because kings or queens are just happy to see a showdown and they call. So what does he have? Could he have pocket jacks? Yes, he could have pocket jacks, but he could have pocket aces too. He'd check through on the flop. But we can't be worried about monsters in the closet. If there's a bigger set, then we just go broke. That's just how it is. You can't fold thinking he has a bigger set. But we put him on his range. Jacks and aces are in it, but they're a smaller part of his range. The hands that make the most sense are ace king, ace queen. They 3-bet the under the gun raise. The board came jack high, misses them completely, but they have a gut shot, so they check through in position, and then they call a bet when the ace comes. So the most accurate hands are ace king, ace queen. Maybe he thinks you're FOS, so he shoves on you. Maybe he's trying to get value out of a worse ace. Maybe he has ace king, he thinks you have ace queen. So he shoves it all in, and we have no option but to call here. We put him on our range, and we think the bulk of it is made up by ace king and ace queen, with small options for jacks and aces, which we're going to go broke with anyways. So we make the call, and he shows us ace king. Our read was right. That accounts for the flop 3-bet, or sorry, the pre-flop 3-bet from an under the gun raise. That accounts for the flop check through, because he had no piece of the board, and that it calls for the turn call. And the river shove is a bit, it's not great, but it's not terrible either. Maybe he put us on ace queen, and he called, and he shoved for value. Either way, we can't get away from our hand when we give him an accurate range like that. That's why it's so important to put your opponent on accurate ranges. Take the information you have and narrow his range down. The more information you have, the more accurate you can put him on a range. If you can put your opponent on an accurate range, then you can play perfect poker against them. If you know in all likelihood what they have or what they probably have, then you can play better against them. And if there's no way you can lose money when you can put your opponents on accurate ranges. So focus on that. Think about how the hand played out and logically deduce what his most likely holdings are. And if you do that, you have no choice but to be successful. Good luck at the tables, and we'll see you next week.